Well, good morning. Welcome. Thank you for joining us for our worship service today, whether you're here in the building or online. My name is Carrie, and it is great to see you all on this holiday weekend. We have a few announcements. First thing, as always, SCF app. If you haven't already downloaded it, you can use the QR code now with your phone. This is our primary way of staying connected with each other through the week. It also will have your teaching notes for today. Today is the last day for Undy Sunday, so you don't have to hear about that anymore. But thank you to everyone who has generously donated to Project 150. When you don't have something that is the normal necessities, it really matters, and you guys have made a difference in some of the lives of the people in this community specifically. So thank you. If you had decided that you wanted to bring some and you're like, oh, I forgot, they will take it for you during the week. Just remember that we're closed on Monday and we're closed on Friday, so it'll be Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday to bring your extra donations for that. Thank you again for being so generous. Now, we also have coming up next Sunday, tri-tip meeting. We have the forward meeting. So they're going to give us a tri-tip dinner. So if you're not going, please RSVP yes, so there's extra for the rest of us. But no, this in all seriousness, though, Forward is our annual meeting where we look back at the highlights of each department. We get to hear from staff that we don't get to normally see on a Sunday up front. They'll get to report what we've done well and what we're going to be doing in the future. And then on top of that, we get to ask questions, which is very nice because we can't do that always on a Sunday morning. And then we also get the results remember that church survey we did? We get to see the results of that and how we're going to implement that into what we're doing going forward. So please get on your app, RSVP yes, all of you, even if you're not going. And hopefully we will see you back here next Sunday at 6 p.m. for our tri-tip meeting called Forward. Also, our app, again. Our app is something, you can see in the middle is families. It looks a little bit different right now because we do change the different prompts on there, but it is right at the beginning. There is an event happening. This is just to remind you to check your app for upcoming events if you're not already connected with people. There are always something going on. There's something for families and middle school. There's high school camp coming up. So if you hit families, that's a good place to start. If you have kids, middle schoolers or high schoolers, and it's a great way to get involved and get going. I think right now there's just mostly camp. Now we have Cancer Community Clubhouse. They are going to be in our cafe at the end of the service. Please go visit them. 2 reasons for that. Number 1, they're a nonprofit doing some great things for people with cancer. Number 2, they're our neighbors. They took over the post office. They are renting that from us here in the shopping center. So go over there and say, welcome to the neighborhood, see how you can help. And this is what they do. We're going to watch this video. Thank you so much for joining us this morning at SCF.
We are the Cancer Community Clubhouse, and we're a new nonprofit in town that focuses on survivorship issues. So when people are diagnosed with cancer, of course, it's scary. So that's kind of, once you go through cancer treatment, especially if it's really invasive, like chemos and things like that, cancer patients end up coming out of that treatment having a lot of depression, anxiety, things like that. And so that's why we got together to create this nonprofit to fulfill a need here locally for survivors to have a place to come where they can kind of learn how
other survivors learn how to process the trauma that they went through.
Yeah, to move through the experience of cancer so that you don't end up stuck. And so part of the reason that we did this and how we got involved in it was that I was diagnosed as a young single mother with stage 3 breast cancer back in 2013, and went through all my treatment, but then thought that I was going to get back to life as normal, and that didn't happen for me. And there weren't medical professionals that were saying, hey, life isn't going to be normal after you go through cancer treatment. So I'm trying to get back to normal, and having these experiences, and ultimately realized that cancer had changed pretty much every aspect of my life.
Good morning, everybody. Hey, if you guys have been with us for, the last year or so, we've been doing these preparation moments, where at this point we kind of talk a little bit about what we're going to be going over in the teaching today, and a moment to kind of settle our hearts, from whatever's going on outside or at home, and kind of prepare ourselves for what's coming today. And so today we're continuing our series where we're going through the Beatitudes, and the verse we're going to look at today is this one. And so I'm going to ask that you guys read this aloud with me, and then I'm going to ask a question for you to think over during our time of worship through music this morning. So if you guys would read this aloud with me together. Ready? God blesses those who work for peace, for they will be called the children of God. Now, if you grew up in a church where you use a different translation other than the New Living Translation, you probably see that a little differently than what you remember. You probably remember it being, blessed are the peacemakers. This one says, God blesses those who work for peace. There's a difference in that phrasing, and we're going to talk a lot about that this morning, but I want you guys to take a moment during this time of preparing our heart for the teaching to think through that shift. What does that look like for you? What would it look like for you to actively work for peace in your life? Does that make sense? All right, hey, we're going to go ahead and enter into a time of worship today through music. So if you guys want to stand, you're welcome to stand with us, and thanks for being here.
You are worthy, worthy. beckoning. I can sense the call of your spirit. It's a still small voice, but I hear it. Lead me in your ways, breathe upon my faith. There's a place where there are no limits, and you won't relent till I'm in it. And you don't want a surface relationship, you want more than this. Take me on a deep dive into your heart. Show me every detail, unveil all that you are, all that you are. Into the unknown, Father, come and show that your spirit's never been hiding. It's the faithful ones that keep finding. And I don't want a surface relationship, I want more than this. Take me on a deep dive into your heart. Show me every detail, unveil all that you are. Take me on a deep dive into your heart. Show me every detail, unveil all that you are, all that you are, all that you are, all that you are. Show me what's breaking your heart, even if it messes me up. 'Cause I don't wanna know you in part, I wanna know you, really know you. Don't wanna reach the end of my life knowing there was more I could find. Oh, I don't wanna know you in part, I wanna know you, really know you. Show me what's breaking your heart, even if it messes me up. 'Cause I don't wanna know you in part, I wanna know you, really know you. Don't wanna reach the end of my life knowing there was more I could find. I don't wanna know you in part, I wanna know you, really know you. Yeah, I wanna know you, really know you. Yeah, I wanna love you, really love you. Yeah, I wanna love you, really love you. Take me on a deep dive into your heart. Show me every detail, unveil all that you are. Take me on a deep dive into your heart. Show me every detail, unveil all that you are, all that you are. as nothing. The King of all kings came to serve, washing my feet, covering me with your love. If more of you means less of me, then take everything. Yes, all of you is all of
All right. Good morning, everybody. All right. As we start this morning, I just kind of want to talk a little bit about where I've been in the last few months and what I've been up to. And it might sound like we're not going anywhere. Be patient with me. It's going to make sense in a bit, I promise. But for the last few months, I've picked up a side job on top of my current one, working for my father. And so I'm working for my dad a few shifts a week, and it's a mobile home park, and we have tenants there that have been there longer than I've been alive. And my dad's always been the one that works there. And now that I'm in that space and I'm working there, what I find really interesting is that like these tenants come in expecting to see him, and they see me. And the first thing out of everybody's mouth is always, "Oh, you're Benny's kid, aren't you?" And it's like, "Oh, yeah." And if you don't know my dad, you miss something here. My dad and I look very much the same. I have every family trait you could have from your father. I mean, I look like him, I sound like him, I act like him in a lot of ways. And so they walk in and immediately they know exactly, it's either, "Oh, you're Benny's kid," or it's, "Which one of Benny's kids are you?" Because there's not even a doubt in their mind. They know that's who I am. And as a kid growing up, it kind of bothered me sometimes, and I didn't know why, but it was just like, no, I'm my own person. And it was weird to me. But now I'm working there, and it's every day, and I'm getting used to it. But then it goes even further than that now. When I answer the phone, I don't realize that I don't just sound like him. We have the same voice. And we have the same cadence of how we speak. And so growing up, I've watched my dad, how he answered his phone at work. He had the same phrasing of saying the business name. And I picked that up naturally. He didn't train me. I just knew this is how I answer the phone in this job. And what I've learned, though, is I have to add a second line. I have to add, "This is Nick. How can I help you?" Because most of the time, people hear the cadence and the phrase and the tone of voice, and they know that it's him, and they go into a problem that's been being worked on for years, and there's context behind it, and they get so far in before I get, whoa, slow down. I'm not Benny. I don't know what you're talking about. Can we bring this back and bring me along on the way? And I have to slow them down. And you might think I'm crazy with that, but I've literally had people say in the last week, twice, 2 different people, they go, "Benny, did you just say you're Nick?" No, Nick said this is Nick so that you know this wasn't Benny. Like, that's the point of this. But they know him so well, but they see how I am his son just because of the family resemblance. And see, this is something that I've spent my whole life, this is a part of who I am. And then you have the second layer added to this of the fact that our family name is a name that has been in this valley for 5 generations now with my kids. And there's things that are assumed or known based off my name alone, who I am and what I'm about. And see, I don't ever remember having a moment where my dad sat me down and explained this to me, but I knew it deep down that like wherever I go, people look at me and they see my father. And they look at me or they hear my name and there's going to be something assumed because you're a part of that family. I know something about you. Whether it's true or not, I knew there's something different with this. That I represent more than just me when I am in public. That Reno really is a small town and I can't go anywhere without someone knowing who I am and what family I belong to. And so I need to be aware of my actions because what I do and say impacts so much more than just me. It impacts my father's reputation because when they see me, they see him. That I have to walk through those things pretty carefully. Now, like I said, I think there's goods and there's bads to that. I think there's moments where just because of who my family is, I've had conversations with people that I never would have had a chance to talk to before because they knew somebody in my family. And then there's other moments where I've had to explain to people, okay, you've had an interaction with somebody in my family, it seems. that maybe has colored it a different way, and I have to do some work to repair that reputation as well. Now, this conversation has been on my mind as I've been working in that office. I've been seeing that, and then we'll talk about how it connects to the teaching in a minute. But I started wondering, like, is that a unique experience of mine because of who my family is and how long they've been in this area? Or is that something that each of us have something along those lines? And the more I think about it, the more I realize we each have a family trait of one way or another. Whether that is a physical trait where you look like and sound like your father like I do. Or is it something that's a value-based system in the traits of your family because of who you are? People know what you're about and who your family is just because of the name you have. They know something about you. And so, again, like I said, I'm curious, is that just me and my experience, or is it each and every one of us? And so as we jump into this teaching this morning, I want you to take a moment and pause and think about that. What are the family traits that you carry, whether physically or value-based? What is a family trait that you carry on for your family? Okay, now I want you to do the uncomfortable. I'm going to call for a lot of uncomfortable today, so buckle up. I want you to talk to somebody around you and share what that family trait that means something to you might be. Okay? So I'm going to give you a moment, turn to somebody, share what that looks like in your life. Hey, someone just said, does it have to be a positive one? Probably not. Some of us have negative family traits that we carry, right? That's okay too. All right. Side note on this that I don't have in my notes, and I probably shouldn't go this route, but one of my family traits that I have is my nose. And I can remember my brothers teasing me and saying, like, hey, we all have the same family nose, but we grew into ours. Right? Like, hey, like, we have family traits. We have things that people can see in us. And that's something that I think is so important as we're going to pull this into the teaching here, is the verse that we read this morning that we're going to look over again, that the family trait that we have of being those who work for peace, that's how people will know that we are the children of God. And that's where we're going to connect this in here. It's like, this is the family trait we have. This is something that we work towards that calls us and shows people who we are. Okay? But as we get into this, we're going to look at the idea of the Beatitudes today. And we're going to read through all of them. I'm going to read through all of them that we've gone over, the one we're going over today, and where we're going to go. Okay? And as we read the Beatitudes, I want you to be walking through this and looking at this. For those that have been here for this series and this teaching, I want you to think through each one of those terms, each one of the things that we've taught on, and say, okay, that's that, and I remember it connected to my life this way, and how do you put that together? I think too often we read the Beatitudes as this kind of light, fluffy thing that might not actually impact my life. And I think for those of us who've been walking through this series, it's been challenging for me to see, okay, how does this actually go from this nice, light, and fluffy thing to where am I in this? And what do I need to grow? And where do I need to take steps in this process? So I want you to do your best to recall each one of these teachings that we've gone through. If you haven't been here and you haven't been able to watch those, I encourage you to go online and go back and watch this series through. I think it's been a big impact in my life to really rethink what this idea of the Beatitudes could be. or maybe what it was intended to be and what I've misread them as for so long. But we're going to go ahead and start by reading through this today. I'm going to read Matthew 5, verses 3 through 10, and it says this: God blesses those who are poor and realize their need for him, for the kingdom of heaven is theirs. God blesses those who mourn, for they will be comforted. God blesses those who are humble, for they will inherit the whole earth. God blesses those who hunger and thirst for justice, for they will be satisfied. God blesses those who are merciful, for they will be shown mercy. God blesses those whose hearts are pure, for they will see God. God blesses those who work for peace, for they will be called the children of God. God blesses those who are persecuted for doing right, for the kingdom of heaven is theirs. And as Jason's mentioned as he's walked through this and taught this series with us, I think the word blessed, or God blesses those, or blessed, depending on your translation, we've kind of got away from that word in our common vernacular. What I mean by that is like the words that we use on a regular daily basis, our vernacular, we've kind of lost the meaning of what blessing means. And we kind of just said, yeah, it's this churchy word and it's this thing. And Jason's really kind of rephrased that and repackaged that a little bit to say, like, the idea behind this is a good life. This is what a good life looks like. And we can, that helps me start to put it together. But then Jason, the last 2 weeks, kind of took it a little bit deeper to where it really connected with me. It's like, it's a father sitting there with his kids saying, this is my desire for your life. I know how it can be, and I know the way it's supposed to be, and I have this desire for you to live a life that is so much more than what you think. And as we read through these, it changes how I understand that or interpret that when I hear it as a father saying, I want you, my child, to be one who is humble. Because that's what a good life looks like. I want you as a father to have, or I want me as a father, my heart for my child is that you be one that hungers for justice. Because you know how important that is in life. And I want that for you to be someone who's fighting for things that are good. Or me as a father looking at a child saying, I want my child to be merciful. Not like, hey, just be merciful and you'll be blessed. But no, I want you to be merciful because I know when you are merciful to others, there's a higher chance that they're going to be merciful with you. This is what I want for you. I want something so much more for you than what you might see. This is what the good life is designed to be. This is the way it was meant to be. This is what I want for you. But it's here in this verse that we're looking at today where I see it change from like traits and qualities, right? Mercy and grace and this idea of being someone who's poor at heart, relying on God rather than our own way, saying like, hey, rather than these traits, we're going to shift over here to maybe an action point, a responsibility, or a task. I want us to see this, that he's saying like his children, the people that are in his family that bear his name, those are the ones that are characterized by the people who work for peace. Think about that for a second here. Those who work for peace. And he's asking this of us. Why? Because those who work for peace carry my name. For you will be called the children of God. So you will be blessed. You'll be living a right life. You'll be living life the way it was designed to be when you resemble God and his traits and attributes. When you bear the family resemblance. Just as the father had hoped for his children, I want you to look a little bit like me. And I want you to carry my name well into this public sphere. Are you a part of this family? When people look at you and how you work for peace, they will see a child of God. You see, I think we often talk about this idea of like, as Christians, our responsibility is to share the gospel, is to evangelize, to go out and share with people what we believe and why we believe it. And if you grew up anywhere in a church setting like maybe I did, there were ways and tactics and things that we were like told or trained how to do this best, right? Like maybe you were 70s to 80s in that realm, and you're like, hey, we got the right tract that we printed out and that we got to go hand out on the street. And it's got the right words, and I just need to follow the instructions here. Or maybe you're in the 90s in youth ministry like me, where they're going, okay, well, we got these like really cool word pictures, right? We want to have that bridge analogy where it makes sense, and it's if you just do the packaged thing, they can't really argue with you. And you have all these things that say like, hey, this is how you go and do this and do it right so that they can't question you. And you better make sure you have all the answers in your head, but when they do question you, you make sure that you look and sound like you know what you're talking about. And there's all this pressure put into how do we share our faith and how do we represent Jesus in this world, and you better do it the right way. Or maybe it's so much simpler than that. Maybe if we just resemble our Father and we have the family traits, that when they look at you, they go, oh, that's what a Christian is. Maybe if we're going to follow the Beatitudes and we start to do these things and we start to work for peace in our lives, people will look at you and say, oh, that's what a follower of God looks like. Maybe, just maybe at that moment when we start to look and sound like our Father, at that moment, they start to question, is that you and your words, or is that God speaking? We have this ability to say, like, does my life look like my Father's? And if so, what is that doing in how I act in the world? Is it helping or hurting the reputation of who God is? You see, blessed are the peacemakers because they will be known as the children of God, because they will look and sound like their Father. That's our first fill in the blank this morning. The children of God look and sound like their Father. So what does a life that resembles these family traits of working for peace actually practically look like for us? There's a lot of ways that we can address this, and we're going to look at a few this morning. One way that I think what we see in the Beatitudes, this moment where Jesus is saying, hey, this is the kingdom manifesto. And right, that title, when Jason first said this is the series we're going into and it looks like, I was like, ooh, manifesto, like that's a little bit harsh of a wording. But as Jason explained that, it's like, oh, no, that totally makes sense. This is, if you want to be a part of this kingdom, this is what it looks like. This is what we believe to the core of who we are. And Jesus is saying, if you want to be a part of this family, here are our family traits. And this is what it looks like to be a follower of Christ. And so I think when we talk about this one of what does it look like to be someone who works for peace, I think it's following through with the Beatitudes. But again, it's not always easy. So as we've been going through this series, there's a guy in our small group that I've looked up to for many years, and he means a lot to me. And I remember we were sitting there the first night that we started this series, the first Monday right afterwards, and he said something along the phrase, I'm not going to get the wording right, but he's like, I really have no use for this in my life. Like, I understand it's good, and I understand that it's something that I should, but in the core of who I am, I struggle with these. They seem like not me or not what I want to do, and I have to wrestle with this because it's not easy for me. And I'm not saying that was like a bad thing that he said. No, it hit me. Because I remember that first night that he said that, I looked at him and said, what are you talking about? These are the very things I see in you. And this is what I see how you describe these. And it was like, almost like he said, no, like, I'm not looking for that. I'm just saying it. I'm struggling with applying these into my life. It is work to apply these things. But as I've watched him week after week in this series, I watched that he has put in the work of self-assessment and realizing, is this something I need to work on? Why is this uncomfortable for me? Why is this hard for me? And you know what that has done for me? It has challenged me to say what I have seen as the Beatitudes my whole life is this quick, nice, fluffy thing of like, hey, if you're a follower of Jesus, you're meek and mild. And I go, cool. Like, I don't know what that means. And I just move on. But as I've watched him wrestle with it, it has challenged me, where am I putting the work in? And so I want to ask you, if we've been going through this series, are you one that someone says like, this isn't for me and this isn't something I want to look at because it makes me uncomfortable? Or maybe you're someone that said, I've read this a million times and I really don't care anymore. Either one of those, we got to put the work in. And we got to look at this and say, how does this apply to us? So here's my thing. I really think when we put the work in with each one of these, it is a part of being one who works for peace. So let me explain that a little bit clearer here as we go through this again. What it looks like to work for peace. Those who work for peace realize their need for God because we understand, by the way, this is poor in spirit is how it's been translated at times, realizing our need for God because we understand we aren't the ones that can do any of this. And that on our own, left to our own desires and our own will, when we go do things because the way we want to do them, what do we end up doing? We create conflict between us and others, and we hurt other people. And all of a sudden we see this pain start to come into this world. That maybe the ones that take the time to work on this, they work on humility to start. Maybe they work on self-assessment and where I am. Maybe it's doing the work of surrendering our will over to him. I understand that you're the only one that can fix this, not me. So I got to let go of my desires and my will and let you do what you need to do. That takes work. Those who work for peace mourn with one another. Mourn with people who have lost, maybe possibly because of the injustices that are caused because we are trying to take things for ourselves. Or maybe they lost and it's just the effects of sin is death and we see the pain and loss in this world. And he's calling us in the Beatitudes, say, if you want to be a part of this family, you got to mourn with people. And what that looks like takes work. It takes work of giving resources or time, sitting with somebody in their need and saying, I'm going to give up everything else that I'm going through right now and give up my ability to have me time to sit with you in the pain as long as it takes. That's work. And there's times where we go, man, are we back in this spot again over and over and over again? I've sat with you before and now I got to sit with you again. And that part of us that wants what we want, we got to put work in. And I can mourn with you or I can bring comfort to you because you know what? Others have brought comfort to me. And I want to be a part of that too. But that takes work. Those who work for peace are humble, knowing that ultimately God is the only one that can bring peace in this world, but he's given us the ability and the privilege to work towards that peace with him, to represent that family of bringing peace with him. But that takes letting go of our pride. That takes the work of letting go of our need for validation and putting others actually first above our own desires and will. Those who work for peace thirst for justice, knowing that injustice itself is what brings the harm to this world. That we don't just hunger and thirst for it, but we actually start putting into action some plans of saying, how do I help in this situation? What would it look like for me to take the injustices I see in this world and instead of just saying, well, there's nothing I can do about it, But actually slow down and actually ask yourself, well, what can I do about it? Where can I step into this? Where can I step in and represent the family that I belong to? Represent the Father that I have in his love in this circumstance, as hard or as difficult as that might be. But again, that takes work. See, those who work for peace are merciful because we know what it means to be given mercy. Because we understand what we deserved and what God chose not to give us. He didn't give us the punishment we deserved, but he gave us mercy and grace. And so as we walk alongside in this idea of bringing mercy to people, again, the work comes back to this idea of being humble, putting aside our pride and our rights and what we believe we think should happen, and maybe just being merciful and caring for the person that is standing in front of us. See, those who work for peace have pure hearts. And because we can't pursue this kingdom or be a part of this family with a heart that's not pure. Because think about that for a second. We can't move forward with God with twisted motives or selfish gain. We've got to follow him and say, like, man, I got to put away those things in the past. We have to start by doing the work of surrendering first, accepting the gift that Christ has given through us through his Son. But secondly, we also have to understand that if we accept that gift and forgiveness and that mercy, then things also have to look different from that day forward. And the work here of a pure heart is saying, I'm not going to go back to the things that I desired before. I'm not going to go back to treating people the way I did before. I'm going to stop the gossiping. I'm going to stop taking advantage of the others. I'm not going to be the cause of injustice in my world. I have to make a tangible change. See, and then all this comes down to this point of this is how you will be known as the children of God. This is how people will see the family resemblance lived out in your life according to this kingdom manifesto that we agree to. That working for peace is how people know what family we are part of. And I think it's easy to say, like, okay, this is a list of things that Jesus said, you go do. And that is part of it. But what I love is this is one of the first things that Jesus does in his teachings. And it's the start of, hey, this is where we're going. And I think if you realize that this is Jesus saying, like, hey, are you looking to me? This is what the family looks like. This is what we could be. And we start to look at every interaction in the Gospels that we see Jesus interacting with people one-on-one. If we look at it through the lens of the Beatitudes, you will see this is exactly who Jesus is himself. These are the traits that Jesus displayed, and this is how we can follow along. So yes, there is this idea of working for peace is doing these things, but we also look at our Father as the example for working for peace. So when wondering, how do I take that into the practical relationships in my life, we have the example of him to follow that. That's our second fill in the blank this morning, is our Father is the example of working for peace. So as you look at this, and I'm just going to throw a few examples out there this morning, and we go through the Gospels and we can see Jesus' interactions with people. And often I think, like, okay, how would I react in that versus how he is? It's pretty telling of where my life is. You got moments like you've got Peter in the garden, and it's the night before Jesus is going to be arrested, or the night Jesus is arrested. And he's following this Messiah that he said, like, you're the rabbi I want to be like. I want to follow you. I want to learn from you. And I believe you are who you say you are. And all of a sudden, these guys come in to arrest Jesus. And Peter, who's known as a zealot, as someone who wants to fight all the time, he's this guy that looked forward to the Messiah coming and overthrowing the Roman government, and yet that's not necessarily who Jesus is. And he's going, I don't know how to do this, but you know what? You're taking him to arrest him. So what is his response? He draws his sword and he swings at the guy arresting Jesus. And he cuts off his ear. And there's this moment where Jesus goes, nope, Peter, that's not what we're about here. Put your sword away. I know you want this overflowing of the government, but that's not where we're going. So Jesus calls Peter out and says, that's not the way we're doing it. But he also bends down and picks up the ear of the guy that just got lobbed off and miraculously heals it and puts it back in place. This is the same Peter who earlier in this moment, Jesus says, hey, you're going to doubt me and you're going to question me and you're going to deny that you ever knew me in the next few days. Peter's going, no, that's not me. That's not me. He's going, no, it is. That's going to happen. And as he watches this guy he loved and followed and wanted to be like get arrested and then mocked and beaten and spit on and then go to death on a cross and be buried in that time frame, as he's walking through watching this, as people say, aren't you one of his followers? He goes, no, that's not me. And he lived those things out. So we watch Jesus' reaction when he comes back and he sees Peter again. He goes, do you love me? Do you love me? I know you doubted it, but do you love me? Do you know who I am? See, in this moment, Jesus had every right, every reason to say, you abandoned me. You drew that sword and you attacked when you knew that's not what we're about. You did these things wrong. You're done. You're out. I'm done with you. He could have said that. I think he would have been justified in doing so. But that's not the example that our Father gave us in this moment. See, the reaction of Jesus in this moment is, one, being patient with his student following him, his kid that he loved, saying, I get it. It's hard sometimes for you to understand. It takes time. I still love you. I'm still right here. I'm still walking alongside you. Our example from our Father in this is doing the work of being a peacemaker, is not just saying, Peter, put the sword away, but also picking up the ear from the harm done by one of his kids and saying, I'm going to make it right. I think often we can say, is it better for us to heal those that are harmed in the church, or is it better for us to address those that are doing the harm from the church and representing the family poorly? But our example from our Father is it's both. The work of being someone who works towards peace is both addressing those who are doing the harm, but also doing the work of healing and taking the time to be with the people that were hurt. Or maybe it's a moment in Scripture where we look at, and Jason and I have talked about this a ton around a fire pit of like, I love just wrestling this thought in my head, and he's talked about it on this stage a few times, but that when you look at that night before Jesus was arrested, he's talking and he says, hey, one of you is going to betray me. And everyone sitting at the table goes, I can't imagine who it might be. And so it's so much so that Jesus treated them all equally in that moment that like they were like, I can't see anyone else doing this. So if I can't see any of them being that way, or Jesus didn't treat any of them differently knowing that, so is it me? Is it possibly me who could be the one who betrays him? I don't know. What does that show me? Is that shows me that Jesus knew that Judas was going to be the one who leads him to his death, a humiliating, painful death. On top of that, knows that this whole time that Judas has been stealing and embezzling from him and his friends, and yet treated him exactly the same as everyone else and walked alongside patiently and lovingly with him. See, our example for our Father about what it means to walk in a way that works for peace with people is having integrity with how we represent the kingdom of God regardless of who's in front of us. Think about this for a second. When you want to represent the kingdom of God, when you want to be a Christian and known for being a Christian and saying like, hey, this is what I believe, do you only do that when you think that person's going to receive it well or treat me kindly because of that? Do we shy away from representing the family that we are in because there might be conflict or hurt, or maybe they'll view me differently or hurt me? And our example from our Father is treat everybody the same, love everybody the same, regardless of what you know might be coming down the line. That's working for peace, and that's hard work. Or perhaps we need to see moments in Scripture where the working towards peace is noticing injustice and calling it out, but also holding ourselves accountable. Like there's moments where Jesus is walking and the religious leaders say like, hey, we caught this woman in the act of adultery, and they throw her in front of him and say, what are you going to do about it? You know the law. You know the consequences for this. What are you going to say we should do? He doesn't deny that like, hey, there's consequences for that. But he looks at her and he starts to think through like, hey, this is injustice. This is not fair. You caught her in the act, yet you're only bringing me her. There's somebody else involved in this. And he starts to look at the crowd and say like, hey, are you really going to throw her alone up in front here and say like, hey, hold her accountable? When each one of you have done something on the same level? And this is that moment that we hear talked about in church often, of this idea of like, well, those who are without sin throw the first stone. Like, are you ready to actually put her to this accountability? And as they realize that, they walk away. Here's the thing I notice with the father in this moment. He sees her. He talks to her. He spends time saying like, hey, I understand this is wrong and I said something about it, but guess what? The action was also true. And so there needs to be a change here. And a common phrase he said to her and many other people was, go and sin no more. Make a change, right? There's got to be an accountability and a change from the past to where we're going now. And so he calls that truth out, but he's also caring for her. And here's the crazy thing. A lot of the people that he said that phrase to, what ends up happening is those people followed him as a disciple from that point on. And so maybe we sometimes think that the work as a Christian that we need to do to be a peacemaker is that we call out injustice and we say, make it right, but then we walk away. So he's saying, no, I'm calling out injustice and I see you, but hey, we got to make some changes too. And by the way, the cost for him was, now I got another disciple coming along that I have to spend time with, in relationship with, in living life with. And sometimes like we go like, hey, that's a win, but sometimes, no, that's a burden. And that takes the work. It's a good burden. It's a right thing to do, but Jesus is inviting us to see from his example that sometimes when we call out injustice, we need to do the work of walking alongside that person in their life for better. That's the example we see from him. Or maybe it's simpler than that. That when we look at this idea of what Jesus' example for us and what it means working for peace is pointing straight to just what the gospel is. That Jesus, God himself, who has every right, ability, and privilege as being the creator of everything we know and understand, humbled himself to come in the form of human being, lived a life that was not any different or any more special than anyone else, in fact, probably worse, simply for the fact that we as people can look and understand in a tangible way who God is. He humbled himself so that we can comprehend who he is and what he's doing. That he sacrificed himself, went to death on a cross and beating and mocking and being shamed so that we could be made right with God. So that he could make peace between us and God himself. But that took a sacrifice and a commitment and a cost. And he's calling us to that same example of how are we to be peacemakers here. Maybe we need to humble ourselves and put our own pride and rights and things that we think we have aside for the sake of how can I sacrifice so that you can be made right with God? How can I sacrifice my reputation or my life or my resources or my pride to say, have you met the God that I love, that loves you? What can I give up so that you can have a moment and a chance to have peace made between you and God? See, ultimately, There's a Father who wanted you to have a good life. A life he designed for you to have so much more than you can even imagine and believe. One that resembles his family traits. One that I want to belong to, and I have an opportunity to be one that invites others to be a part of this family too. A family that recognizes our need for God and our poorness of spirit and heart. A family that mourns and comforts one another. A family that is full of mercy. A family that is humble. A family that thirsts for justice and does something about it. And a family that works for peace. That's the family I want to be a part of. So our third fill in the blank this morning for you is simply asking yourself this question. Do I reflect the family traits? And maybe do I have some work to do to make sure that those family traits are growing in my life? See, Paul puts it this way in Romans chapter 12. If it is possible, as far as it depends on you, live at peace with everyone. Let's think about that for a second here. If it is possible, that means what? Look for the place where you can be a part of this. Don't just sit back, but hey, wherever it's possible for you, you better look for the chance. Where can I be a peacemaker in this? Where can I be someone who works for peace in this? And as far as it depends on you, what does that mean to me? Hey, stop giving yourself excuses. I can easily say, well, that's happening somewhere across the world, and I got no hand in that. I got no ability to do anything there. But as far as it depends on you, what can you do? Where's God pulling at your heart to be a part of this? At whatever level you are capable. Then live at peace with everyone. There's work to do. We need to be those who work for peace, not necessarily just peacemakers. Now, this is the part that I was talking about at the very beginning. I think we lost this in our vernacular too, that a peacemaker is how I hear it in the common vernacular and pseudo-psychology of make-believe, I feel. We've made this term so you're the youngest sibling who's seen conflict in your house your whole life. And so you're the peacemaker. You're the one who wants to just, whatever I can do to cover up any pain or hurt point before it happens to make sure we have no conflict ever. That's what I think of when I hear the word peacemaker, because that was kind of me. That's not what he's saying here. He's saying, hey, what is the work you're going to do? Work towards peace. Engage in conflict when it is there for the sake of bringing peace and reconciliation. It might be hard. It might look different. That's why I really like the NLT in this passage saying it's those who work for peace. Because that makes me, in the same way Paul's saying, hey, I got no excuse here. I can't say I don't want to be a peacemaker because that's the weak way. No, I want to be the one who takes action. I want to be the one who works actively towards peace. And so this morning, to close, I want to do an exercise with you. I want to walk through something and give you a chance to kind of engage with where are your next steps for this. So I'm going to ask you to go ahead and close your eyes if that helps you focus. Invite you to close your eyes. And I'm going to walk through this for a bit. When I go into prayer, that's when we know we're going to be done, and you can kind of open your eyes and pop back up if that's where you are. Make sense? All right, so if that's going to be helpful for you to close your eyes to focus, go ahead and do that. I want to ask you this morning. I want you to take a moment to think about somewhere in your life where you feel a lack of peace. This could be a relationship. This could be a personal conflict or a global one that burdens your heart. This could be something that is lifelong struggle of lack of peace, or it could be something that is new and uncomfortable. but find a moment where you can recognize a lack of peace in your life. The first thing I want to ask you with that is I want you to think about what would your Father, specifically Jesus, what would Jesus do in that circumstance? What you know of him, how would he respond? The second part here is to consider, how does that example of what Jesus might do if he was in that space, how does that inform your pursuit of peace in that situation? And now to do the work. If it is possible, as far as it depends on you, what is one practical step that you could take today to be one who works for peace in that circumstance? One practical step. God, I know that this is a privilege for us to represent your family in this world. That sometimes we can think of it as a burden, as, man, if people see me, if they know what family I'm a part of, what will they think, and how do I act properly? God, we just pray that you give us the words and the actions to live out these attitudes that you've given us, that live out this idea that I can be kind and patient, that I can work for healing in the hardest of circumstances and represent your name well. God, as we each take these steps to work towards peace, we just ask that it is your love and your peace and your grace and your mercy that help us walk alongside when people are hurting and mourning. God, I just pray that you put a clear action point for each of us to take a step today towards healing and peace. Give us the right words. And God, we thank you for the privilege that we bear your image as we work for peace in this world. And God, let us represent you and your family well. We are so thankful that you say in Scripture that you adopted us into your family, that we have the privilege to be a part of this. We cannot thank you enough for what you've done to work for peace in our lives with you. And you didn't sit back and wait for us to do anything, that you stepped up first and you gave your son for us so that we can be reconciled with you. We are so thankful for who you are and what you've done in our lives. And we pray this in your name. Amen. All right. And I'm off to, there you are.
Amen. Thank you, Nick. I know that was good for my heart today. If you'd like to continue responding to the message today, or if you have other things going on in your mind that you would like prayer with, we have wonderful people that can pray with us. It'll help us refocus, whether it's a joy or it's something that we need to continue to give over to be peacemakers. What a great way to refocus our hearts is giving it back to God. So that's an opportunity for you. If you're not wanting to be around a person, use your app. We do have prayer requests on there too, and people will pray for you and stand in the gap for you. If you'd like help with RSVPing for Forward, please come over, enter the next step signs, and we'll do that for you. Please plan to attend next week. Also, say hello to our neighbor in the cafe as you're on your way out. Have a great rest of your weekend. If you're going to barbecue and have some fun, maybe take a moment to just say a little prayer for those who have lost military family, because that's why we're having our holiday anyway. So thank you again for celebrating with us here and worshiping with us. Have a great weekend.